All right, so we've got some diagrams here. Won't go too deep into this thing, but this is the typical on-premise deployment. I've got schools here because we do a lot of work for schools, and but if you're a commercial, someone in the commercial market, you can think of these as different sites, different locations. So we might have here, and I'll just there we go. So we've got two sites here, right? And I say admin building in high school. In the commercial world, that might be your primary, like your HQ, and this might be like a DR site or another significant location. And we have a voice/SIP gateway. And those are going to be the way that you terminate, the way the public switch telephone network ingresses your VoIP system, where you get your telephone service. So it's centralized, but it is redundant in this model. And so again, you may have some of your on-premise phone system, which works on a clustering, highly available, like a redundant clustering array. You might have half of it at one site, half of it on the other site. And then your more remote sites, those would be a candidate for the survivability gateway. This is where you might want to have one or two of those POTS lines there. And that's PSTN redundancy, but you may also have some sort of meshing internet connection or an alternate internet circuit. But the remote site is where the survivability becomes important. And there in green, you can see that's essentially the survivability link between those two, and this is kind of the PSTN cloud. So that's the on-prem deployment. Again, this is, it's kind of the obvious. This is the pure cloud model where you have a site, you have one or more phones, they go through the internet to get phone service. That's the end of the story. Relatively simple. Okay, so here's a diagram where we have the cloud-based system, but you had SIP service already, and you had a Cisco gateway already. Or maybe you have specific needs for that SIP service, or they have a pricing model that works better for your organization. So it just makes more sense for you to have your own PSTN connection, one or more, at your locations. And the WebEx calling does that. So here we see we still have, this looks just kind of like the first diagram I showed you, where you still have a SIP gateway at both of the major locations. And then here at a remote site, you can still have that survivability gateway. And this all still works with the cloud system. And then here I also have a pair of the paging servers, and those are also on premise. Moving on, so this we haven't talked about yet, but this is a cloud system that has a cloud PSTN provider. So phone service is provided through WebEx calling. And in this case, your connection to the PSTN goes through the internet at all locations. But the thing to note here is that at all three locations, we still have a survivability gateway. And there might be a POTS line or two at each. So if that internet connection does break, or if one or more internet connections break that are meshed, you can still get dial tone. So the advantages of WebEx, I've touched on a lot of these. A couple of them that I haven't mentioned is that you can use existing Cisco hardware to do this. If you have an investment in 7800, 8800 Cisco phones, you can use firmware that will convert, and then they will register to WebEx calling. And in the hybrid model, we can do this firmware migration to and from. And so, if you have an investment in like PoE paging speakers, analog gateways, Cisco ISR routers, they all can be used with WebEx calling. The security, and then NSI and TAC both support both solutions. So this place where you're going to get support for your existing call manager, it's going to remain the same for WebEx calling. There's quite a deep API system for WebEx in general. I won't go into that, but there is a developer website that you can go to, and it's really pretty incredible. And again, I haven't touched on it, but licensing, the Flex, and some of you might be familiar with the Flex contract, but the Flex is designed, I think it's called Flex because it lets you either license your on-premise system or your cloud system or both. And so, we think about licensing in Cisco, and it's a big eye-rolling thing. But the reality is that it is the most flexible licensing model that I've seen in my years of doing it that allow you access to all of those systems at the same time. So you get to make the choices. Both of these systems can be used where it makes sense for your operation to either, you've got an existing system, you extend it out to the internet, you extend it out so your collab services can be had anywhere, or you can have a hybrid model where you have on-prem, you have cloud where it makes sense, or those who are looking for a full cloud solution, you can have that, but you can also have those anchors on-premise where you can have things like survivability, and you really can pick and choose from any of those things with this solution. So, a segue, security, like I said, is a key differentiator for the Cisco product. It's used by a lot of government entities. It can be programmed to fit compliance for high security environments. And again, securing collab, part of that is also securing the network.